Hi guys. I'd like to start this video off with some quotes from an interview in the NME with singer Hannah Reid from the group London Grammar. And the first line of this article is, it's almost impossible for Hannah Reid to pinpoint a single moment of music industry misogyny that caused her to snap. The first moment of music industry misogyny she describes is as follows. "We were sound checking for a gig and I thought that the bass was too loud." The London Grammar frontwoman remembers of one particularly egregious moment. At this particular show, her two male bandmates, instrumentalists Dot Major and Dan Rothman, were taken seriously when they asked the engineer for changes. When Hannah voiced her concern about the sound levels though, she received an unwanted lecture on how bass actually works. Afterwards, she says with an eye roll over Zoom from her home in London, everyone complained that the bass was too loud and I was like, yeah, I bloody said it. So this is the first incident of music industry misogyny, which is given a great deal of prominence, being the first one in the article. So you can make your mind up for yourselves whether or not that's music industry misogyny from a sound guy. Not exactly the highest person on the totem pole in the music industry, I might add. But I'm struggling to see where the explicit misogyny is in that story anyway. Sure, maybe it's because she was a woman. Maybe, but there's really no way of knowing that. There's no reason to just assume that. And yeah, again, it's not explicit in the story. With that level of detail, if it wasn't presented in a way that effectively tells you that this is due to sexism, like, you wouldn't just assume that it was. I don't think a rational person would just assume that was because of sexism. To me, the most obvious answer is that this person, she complained that it was too loud, and this person didn't like being told what to do. They didn't like being challenged. They didn't like, being criticised for their work, and kind of ignored it and was saying, no, this is fine. Then when everybody else complained about it as well, they thought, okay, maybe I'm wrong, or they thought, okay, literally everyone's complaining about it, so I have to change it now anyway. I don't have a choice. Who knows? Misogyny seems like quite a stretch to me. I would have thought when you're kind of doing an interview about misogyny in the music industry, you might start with something a bit more concrete than that. Yeah. Anyway, she moves on to say, there was a mix-up. She didn't say this. This is in the article. There was a mix-up before a gig when Hannah had to argue with a security guard to let her backstage to her own show, as they didn't believe she was in the band. She later found out the staff member in question had told their tour manager that she was a formidable young woman. I was just like, for fuck's sake, if I was fucking Chris Martin, he would not be called a formidable young woman, she reflects. To me, that's just code for bitch. So, people are referring to her as a formidable young woman, which, yes, I agree, that is code for bitch. Is it possible she was being a bitch? Do they refer to every woman, this person who, by the way, whose gender is not specified, which leads me to believe that this was actually a woman, but who knows, whose gender is not specified, does she refer to everybody, or does he or she, the security guard, refer to everybody, every woman they deal with as a formidable young woman, i.e. code for bitch? Do they think that every woman they deal with is a bitch? Seems unlikely. It seems more likely that in this specific instance, they felt that she was being a bitch. She then makes a comparison with Chris Martin. She says, if I was Chris Martin, I wouldn't be referred to as a formidable young woman. Well, obviously he's not a woman. But more importantly, he's extremely famous. Like, he's in Coldplay, he's a household name. Nobody knows who London Grammar are, really. Like, you know, my mother knows who Chris Martin is. She would recognise him in the street at a glance. Like, she wouldn't even know who London Grammar were, even if you try, you know, even if you tried to jog her memory, even if you tried to explain it. They're not a household name. No one, you know, it's just, yeah. Obviously, Chris Martin would be treated differently. The security guard who gets paid a lot less to work at this event to basically look after you, it's not their job to know who you are, you know. You're not like, I understand, you know, these people, they go around, they get treated like VIPs and stuff, but a security guard it's not really their job to know the name and face of every single artist from every single group that comes through. And I think this same thing probably happened to a lot of people, and they probably just took it on the chin and, you know, didn't really think anything of it, or perhaps found it mildly amusing. Very, very, very hard to see how this one could possibly be considered misogyny. So then there's another incident where she goes to perform for a television appearance, and she discovered a rail of pre-approved looks. Basically, well, I'll just quote her. One was a glittery, very short gold dress. Another one was red satin little shorts with a satin crop top. I do love fashion, and I will dress up every once in a while if I want to, but Dan and Dot were definitely not having to put up with this. I will just wear what the fuck I want to wear, thank you very much. So, again, I mean, yeah, they've suggested for, you know, a pop singer who's in the entertainment industry about to do a TV appearance, sexy outfits. This one, you could say maybe this is misogynistic. Arguably, they might do the same thing. Was she a man? You could say this is just a kind of a natural part of the business she's in. It's pretty normal for people to willingly kind of use sex to kind of sell their products, to sell their work, to sell their music. Some people, in my opinion, pick and choose when they want to do that, and they pick and choose, you know, they will objectify themselves, and then if other people treat them in kind, they will complain about being objectified. I don't know. This incident, I think, is borderline. I think it's fair to say it's a relatively minor incident anyway, but yeah. This is the closest thing I can see in the article to genuine misogyny. Apart from this one, yeah. In 2013, a tweet was posted on the station's Twitter account that read, "We all think that the girl from London Grammar is..." This is from after appearing on Radio 1. Radio 1's Twitter account tweeted, "We all think that the girl from London Grammar is fit. Let us know if you agree." I don't think Radio 1 should tweet things like that. I think it's disrespectful and it's bad. I'm not sure how this is misogyny. People say things like that about men all the time. I remember an episode of The View where Prince had to leave. I believe it was The View. Had to leave because the women on the show would not stop touching him and sexualizing him. I understand, generally speaking, historically at least, this probably happened more to women than to men. In 2013 as well, even, you know, it's not that long ago, but I would say things were quite different in 2013. That said, it's not something that is inherently or explicitly misogynistic. And yeah, this is basically the only thing in the article really that stands up. Anyway, she goes on to describe how that she decided basically that she had to become the leader of the band and they had to essentially become the backing band. They had to be pushed back. So she created she decided she had to become the band leader. So she says, "I did say to Dot and Dan, if I'm the leader, other people will have to respect me and respect us." Her bandmates were happy to let her take the reins. Lyrically, Californian Soil is very much about Hannah's experience as a woman, and we wanted that message to come through as loud as possible. So basically, she's decided as a result of these experiences, as a result of Radio 1 calling her fit, as a result of some outfits that were sexual being suggested to her, and then a security guard not knowing who she was, and what was the other thing? A sound guy not listening to her request to turn the bass down. And this is over a period of like a decade. That was her motivation to push the other members to the background and push herself into the foreground and say, no, I'm the leader and I need to be respected. Fairly strange in my opinion. I'm not sure how you can sort of turn a kind of a power grab like that into a sort of woke thing. I guess she's kind of managed to do that. It's a bit weird to me. I mean, I've had like a lot of experience, a lot of very, very bad experiences. I've barely played live at all. Like, I've done very few shows my time as a musician, and I've had mostly, almost exclusively, horrific experiences. Like, I'll probably do a video about it at some point, but really, really bad experiences, like prejudicial treatment. I'm not saying on the basis of gender, just, you know, you can be treated, people can be prejudiced against you, and for many reasons. It doesn't have to be your gender or the colour of your skin. It can be because they think you're a nobody, or they think you're boring, or they think you're ugly, or they think you're weird, or they think you don't fit in, or you don't have any friends, or they don't like the type of music you make, or they think that they are morally superior to you. There are a million reasons, you know, why you can be treated in a prejudicial way. And yeah, I've had with sound guys even, I mean, things where, like, I guess if I were that way inclined, if I was black or if I was a woman and I was that way inclined, I would have assumed that all of these incidents were like the most egregious imaginable examples of like misogyny or racism or bigotry or whatever. Like I had a guy who I'm pretty sure, because he didn't approve, because he was one of these like purist guys who obviously didn't like sort of modern music and stuff. He didn't approve of the fact that I was using a backing track to rap to. He made this quite clear, and I'm 90% certain he paused my track on purpose midway through the song as a kind of gesture. This was like my 4th show or something, my 5th show. I didn't have any mates in the scene. I was clearly extremely nervous and uncomfortable being there. And this guy, I'm pretty sure, paused my track deliberately in the middle of the song. He didn't say sorry when I got off stage. I was like, what happened? And he was like, yeah, it got paused. And like smiled at me and like didn't say sorry, didn't apologise, didn't do anything. Clearly throughout the whole set was like, the way he was kind of operating the desk was just very passive aggressive, you know, and his responses to everything I do are very passive aggressive. Again, by the way, I can also say maybe he just thought I was a dick, you know. Maybe I don't genuinely believe that. I don't genuinely believe that I did anything wrong, but I have to leave that possibility open in my mind, right? Like, okay, maybe I was rude to him. Like, I kind of know I wasn't, but I do have to leave that possibility open in my mind. But it seems like with a lot of this stuff, that it's just, there's a certain narrative, and that is just accepted. Like, it's unquestioningly accepted. There's no room for any other possibility. This is racism, this is sexism, this is homophobia. That is it. That's just what it is. There's not an element of thoughtfulness or doubt or anything else. And it's hard when you see an article like this, and she selected these 4 incidents over, again, like a 10-year period. And those are the 4 she's picked out. And she has been around a lot more than I have, like so much more, done so many more shows. You know, they're doing shows all the time, and she's interacting with the industry constantly, and at a level where, you know, they're not that high up in it. So one would imagine that there might be more incidents, you know, where they're sort of not treated that respectfully. And these are the 4 incidents that were, you know, chosen for this article. And And this information was extracted from her over like a period of time. This wasn't all done in one sitting, so it's not like this is just the things that came to the top of her head. These were seen as the four most serious incidents of sexism. It's not exactly Harvey Weinstein stuff, I have to say, and it feels a bit distasteful in a way to piggyback off kind of narratives that have legitimately built up over years of like really serious things actually happening of that nature. And it's hard not to think that someone who has picked those four incidents is basically someone who wants to who wants to be a victim, who wants to be seen at least as a victim, who wants to be up against prejudice, which is like, I mean, it hasn't seemed to have, I don't know, it hasn't seemed to have harmed their career prospects in any way. Sorry, I have to put the fan on for a bit. I'm sorry if it's noisy. It's so hot in here. So, yeah, I wanted to start with that because I remember it coming out a few years ago. Let me just check on the monitor how loud this is going to be. Oh, that's pretty bad. That's not good. That's quite loud, isn't it? Yeah, I just need it on for a second. I'll turn it off in a minute. But yeah, I wanted to start with that because I remember reading it a year or so ago, whenever it came out, and just actually I did it. I was on an episode of a podcast, and we talked about it. It was pretty funny. This podcast called the Junkhead Podcast. We talked about that specific thing. I think the episode is called London Grammar. It was funny, and yeah, it just it stood out to me the fact that this was kind of accepted, and I looked at the comments, you know, where this article was posted in various places, and all the comments were like, "Oh yeah, that's terrible. Misogyny in the industry is a very real thing," and stuff. And people just kind of they don't think like, these are quite small incidents, you know. These are fairly kind of, I don't know. I would be very glad if those were my biggest grievances over the last 10 years of being a musician. And I'm not trying to make this about me or my problems, because I know I'm at risk of sounding very bitter, sort of being like, oh, all right for some, eh? You know, and like comparing my own experiences. But really, I mean, I've had so many, and like probably like 50% of the experiences I've had interacting with other people in music have been worse than this, like much more humiliating, much worse. Some of them I do see, I wouldn't say I deserved them. I can see how I could have done things differently. I can see how I could have been more socially adept and better prepared to navigate these environments. But I can't, yeah, I mean, most of them, it's not like I did, you know, I wasn't being nasty to anyone. I wasn't being a bully. I wasn't, you know, I was on my own all the time. I didn't know anyone at any of these events, and these things would happen all the time, like constantly, and I wasn't really given a kind of movement to follow and to say, oh yeah, this is because you're bald, by the way. Like, actually I wasn't bald back then. This is because you're fat or something, you know, this is because you're white, or this is because you're like, oh, there was nothing I could attach it to. So it was just like, people don't like me, you know, like, and people don't respect me. And that feels like shit, like the feeling of, you know, not being respected, and you go to things and other people seem to be normal and they seem to fit in, and you seem to just attract like disrespect or judgment or just avoidance, really. People are just like, oh, he seems weird and he's not very good at this, and his music's fucking weird and he's fucking weird, and it seems like an oddball, and just like, you know, that doesn't feel good. It feels really bad. And besides the point is that, like, yeah, like if those things she mentioned, if those are my grievances in years of being in music, and presumably those things also come hand in hand with like a lot of support and love and praise and respect and all of this stuff, and yeah, I it's just kind of mind-blowing to me that that's taken seriously as like a kind of like this is some sort of moral panic that we should all be thinking about. There was something else in here. I'll cut this out if it's a long break. I just want to try and find it. Oh, a funny thing, yeah, there were no female producers on their album as well. Oh, they just talk about a lot of weird stuff in this article, like she didn't turn up to shows, like she just didn't turn up because she was, and it's just all, it does not come across well at all, and it seems like common sense and reading this and being like, some of this is quite questionable, and sort of maybe thinking it doesn't bode all that well for her. People are just accept the kind of headline that this is misogyny. There's some kind of bit in here, if I remember correctly, about kind of everybody saying she's a bitch and people around her, and I'm trying to find it, sorry, but it's just where is it? Oh yeah. Oh man. Okay, so over the course of a decade in London Grammar, the double standards constantly on show proved understandably exhausting for the vocalist. If I'm strong-minded, I'm being really difficult, or I'm being a bitch, she says. Whereas for the boys, they've just got integrity over what they do. It can be a really, really tiny thing, but if you have it every day and it becomes 1,000 moments, it can actually change who you are. You can't let it go and it's happening all the time. I just don't think it's right to say that, like, generally speaking, a woman who is just, like, in control of her own music and, you know, cares about what's going on and works hard is a bitch, is considered a bitch, whilst men who do the exact same thing are praised as having integrity. If people say you're difficult or a bit, like, I don't know, like, I've observed so many workplaces, so many environments. I've seen so many women, like, assert themselves, and people seem to like it. Like, people don't, if someone is described as being difficult or a bitch, like, and they're the star, you know, she's the singer in the band, and people are telling her that she's difficult or a bitch, like, they don't want to tell her that she's a bitch or that she's difficult. It's not beneficial for people. It's beneficial for people to kiss her ass. And still, like, producers, for example, you know, they have a producer, like, they want to keep the job. People who they're signed to, they want to keep the artists happy. It's not in their interest to call her a bitch. Sound guys, they don't want a complaint from their boss that they called someone a bitch. Collaborators, everybody wants things to, you know, so someone saying she's a bitch or she's difficult, like, it could be worth considering, you know, that maybe she is. There's nothing in this article where she's like, yeah, maybe sometimes I was a bitch, you know. Maybe the fact she mentions further on that she didn't turn up to shows, maybe that was one of the things that made people think she was difficult. Maybe what it sounds like is she agreed to a certain tour schedule as an adult with agency and independence. She agreed to a certain tour schedule and then decided, this is too hard, I'm being worked too hard, I can't do these shows, and just didn't turn up. And people got the train in, people took the night off work, maybe someone's on a date, they buy a ticket for someone else. You know, maybe people, for whatever reason, think London Grammar are one of the best bands in the world. They love London Grammar, they want to come to this show, and she just doesn't turn up. And everyone's angry, and people are like, you're a bitch. You're really difficult, you know. And she's like, I don't fucking care, I'm just too tired. It's ridiculous, I have to do all these shows, it's too bloody much. Okay, you are liable to be called a bitch if you do that, and I'm not sure you can really consider that misogyny. I don't think it's fair to consider that misogyny. I think what is the right thing to do is to first of all say, okay, am I being a bitch? If you think the answer is no, I do feel to some extent you have to prove that to the people you work with who think you're a bitch. I think there should be something in this article where she's like, here's why they thought I was being a bitch, and here's why I'm not. And she doesn't. The other guys in the band are referred to as having integrity. I mean, she's asked them to just drop to the background, just to be, you know, and she's the leader of the band. It was all fine. She was the singer. They did the music. It was just fine. It sounds fine. Everyone knows she's the singer. They know she writes the songs. And she's like, no, I'm the leader. Okay? And you guys are going to sit back there in the background. I'm the leader of the band. and they're just like, okay, it's important to respect women's space, and this is about women's stuff, and we're just men, and we're just gonna, yeah, I don't know. It kind of sounds like she, maybe was being at the very least difficult with them. Yeah, and this article, it's easy to mock. It's in a sense it's low hanging fruit because it's so ridiculous, But the thing is that when you go on these websites, and even NME were a bit late to some of this stuff. Obviously, places like Pitchfork were very early adopters of all of this kind of way of thinking. NME were quite late to it. Still, if you go on NME now, whole front page, it's all just this. You go on Crack, you go on Pitchfork, you go on Noisy, you go on. I don't even remember. I've stopped paying attention to the blogs now. I used to send them my music. They don't want anything to do with it. And it was always funny to me because, like, people, not all people, my music is very, very divisive, very polarizing. Some people hate it. Like, to me, that's a good thing. Like, some people love it. Like, people really, really love it. And some people absolutely hate it. And that, to me, is better than being in between. But I found it strange. I could never get into any of these blogs. I could never get into any. I couldn't even, like, there was one time a guy from Pitchfork wanted to cover one of my songs, and he said, I really like this, I'm going to show it to my editors. And I was already known to their editors and to the other writers, and he never replied. He said he was going to show it to them, and he never replied. And I was like, kept messaging. I was like, hey man, you get that? And I would wait like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I'd message again and be like, hey, any update? How's it going? Blah, blah, blah. Nothing. I'd send him other things. I sent him much better things than that song even. Nothing, not a peep. And I'd send it to all of them. Not a peep, ever. It was... back when I was on Twitter, a lot of these people were very public about their kind of ideological beliefs, their beliefs about who should or shouldn't be successful in music, whose time it was, whose time it wasn't, perhaps. A lot of very bold assumptions about these sweeping generalizations about whole groups, which one would think is kind of the antithesis of that whole kind of tolerant accepting in quotes ideology, but apparently not. So they could, in fact, one guy, I won't name him, but on Instagram, he told me, no one cares, your story is not important. I think most people who are in the know about the kind of ideology I'm talking about, they know what he meant by that. They know what he meant by looking at me, not knowing anything about me. They know what he meant, basically. If you are like me and you don't make it very clear that you're like kind of like, oh, I'm sorry, and I'm gonna like wear stuff that shows that I'm kind of like cool with the movement, and I'm like sorry for being who I am, and I know that my people have like done stuff, and I know that men are like bad, and like if you don't behave in a way that conveys that, or in a way that kind of conveys like, yeah, I'm kind of like down with the whole hip hop thing, but I'm a white guy, so I know my place, and I'm like, there's a certain way you're supposed to act, basically, to convey that you are capable of fitting in to this model, to this ideological model, which is bonkers because this is music we're talking about, right? But I listen to people whose beliefs I find ridiculous, like Grimes, the singer. Like, I find the things she says insane. I really like her music. So many rappers, Jesus Christ. I mean, I can't, now it has infected the music so much, I can't listen to Kendrick's new stuff, but I've always known like his beliefs were ridiculous, but I fucking love his music. Like, his old music is some of the best music ever created. I don't really care that probably ideologically we would not see eye to eye on very much at all. It shouldn't matter. Like, there are some artists where I feel like I do kind of, I like their opinions on things. I think, oh, that's cool, This is someone I might like to meet, We have some things in common there, but it doesn't really, this is music we're talking about. It's not politics, but it's become politics, and it's become a weird form of politics, and it hides and it disguises itself as other things. And when you try to point it out, it's kind of like, whoa, what? It kind of disappears, and they're like, what do you mean? What do you mean woke culture? What do you mean cancel culture? What is this stuff? Like, tell me what it is. And you get caught in this thing of trying to define something that's so all-encompassing, you can't really define it, because you're like, it is just the culture. It is just everything now. All mainstream pop culture, youth culture, is in all of it. And there's obviously behind that a corporate interest in all of this. But yeah, I've got to put the fan on again for a bit, sorry. It is fucking hot. There's no aircon. I live in Spain, so so what was I saying? Where was I? To me, I felt I knew what that guy was saying when this reflection is driving me crazy. Let me see if I can just. That's a little bit better, kind of. I felt I knew what he was saying with that, really, which was like, due to your demographic, the demographic you seemingly fit into, you are not of interest, you are not important. If anything, you are kind of actively bad just for being what you are, and we're only interested in promoting things. And it's a really silly way of looking at things, because it goes without saying, I'm sure most people watching this are smart enough to know why that's stupid, but like, it assumes so much, and it's ironically so prejudicial. And sorry, there's a bug. I hope that's not a baby cockroach. One sec. Don't think it was. Whatever it is, it's gone now. It assumes so much, it assumes so much about you. It assumes so much about others, the people it claims to kind of patronize and protect and care about. It assumes so much. You could be black and come from a really posh family and have had everything handed to you. Like, you could be white and have it's so superficial. It's so superficial. And so beyond superficial, it's so unnecessary to get into in the first place. It's just so kind of, it's just crazy. And people might say, oh yeah, there's plenty of people who are like, who don't fit into those groups, who are successful. More, you could argue they're even dominant in. Well, many of those people were successful years ago, and most others, if they want to be successful, to become successful, to continue being successful, they are forced basically to get in line and to accept these narratives and to parrot them, and to and I've seen it happen to so many people. There's so many people where for years they didn't get on board with all this stuff, all this kind of excessively ideological stuff that's permeating the music business and most other adjacent industries. They for years they wouldn't say anything, and that led me to believe like, oh yeah, this person's secretly cool and they're just keeping quiet about it. And then they come out and they start parroting all the shit, and I think they realise after a certain point, I'm not going to be successful if I don't fall in line with this ideological stuff. And it's always sad and disappointing to see, when someone makes their first kind of post, their first like Instagram post of that nature, and you're just like, oh, it's another one then. So that's basically everyone, because I did an interview on my podcast, Cheek Clappers, if you don't know it already. It's not like this channel. It's very different. You might not like it unless the name alone will probably tell you whether or not you'll like it. Anyway, I did an interview with Coleman Hughes. I don't know if you guys know who Coleman Hughes is. He's really good, really smart, interesting guy, and he makes music as well. Like, he's not primarily known for music. He's known for other stuff, but he does make music. And I was saying to him, like, do you see the way that things are changing? Because music is very much, I think to call it left wing is wrong anyway, because it's like it generally espouses like corporate values, but it's whatever left and right now is more. It's become different, and we're talking more like socially left, I guess. Like a lot of different names for a lot of different things going on at the moment, but people know what I mean. And I asked him if he felt it would shift the other way, and he said, or how it might, and he said he didn't want it to. And I agree with him. Like, I don't want everybody to see things the way I do. In the world in general, I mean, that sounds horrible, and like I would probably immediately find some other kind of belief system to adhere to, because I just would be uncomfortable with that. And like, why should you shouldn't? That's one of the beautiful things about life. I don't mean to get all like, but I really mean it, like really sincerely. One of the great things about a free society, which I think, you know, like in a lot of places we kind of had until very recently, was like people can disagree with each other and talk about it, and that's the point. That's like, it's not just a kind of like a democracy from an electoral point of view, but like socially and stuff. It's like people used to be able to have discussions more. People, if you look at talk shows from the 70s and 80s and 90s, it's just so different. Like when they would talk about a controversial topic, people did get heated. I'm not saying it was always, but like there wasn't this thing of people just want to just crush things that they don't agree with, and like they want to eradicate certain things, and they want other things to just cover everything. They want this blanket of this like oppressive ideology just over everything, and there's no room for anything else. And I just think like why? Like there's no need for it. I can have light-hearted, pleasant conversations with people who believe totally different things to me, but it's very difficult to do that from a starting point of everything you think is bad and wrong and kind of not allowed, and it's like contraband. It's like prohibited ideas, and we're kind of enforcing that on ourselves, often at the behest of governments, often at the behest of corporations, and at the behest of one another. Like we're kind of like enforcing this rigid worldview on ourselves, and it's been very painful to watch. I'm sure I know for a lot of people for years in so many walks of life, and in some ways the music industry, like that's the least of it. In academia and loads of other places it's like worse, but it's when you go on these, well, I don't remember if I finished this point earlier. I'm a bit all over the place. I haven't got a plan for this video, or not that I ever do anyway, but I'm just, you know, whatever. I'm just sort of, but when you go on these websites, these music review websites, I haven't been on in a while, but whenever I'd go on a year or two ago, it was just all about this stuff. It was just all of it, and it was like, even when it wasn't, it seemed to be. It was kind of implied, you know, like there was kind of like a feeling. Even the way, for example, certain photos are taken that accentuate or attenuate certain things, and like the way the names of songs and the vibe and the way people would dress and the way people would react to other things, and the way it's been very clear for a long time now what kind of is acceptable and what isn't, and there's no flexibility in that really, and I don't know, perhaps Kanye West is a bad example because there's so much of his behaviour that has always rubbed people up the wrong way. He is a bad example. It's not a useful example to focus on him. Morrissey is a very interesting one, right? Because Morrissey has put years of his life and his creative efforts into championing things that he felt were right, you know, and challenging things he felt were wrong, whether it's like the monarchy or the meat trade or whatever else. Most people know that eating mass-produced meat, at least, is wrong. It is just wrong. And this struck me a minute ago because I was watching an interview with someone who I always assumed to be an industry plant. She's called like Biba Booby or something, and she makes like kind of like 90s inspired indie rock. And I saw her, and I was watching this interview with her, and she was talking about eating like prosciutto ham or something, and I was like, I have a feeling if I Google her name and racism or sexism, there'll be loads of articles about, the racism she's encountered and talking about racism and all this kind of stuff. There was loads. There was shitloads. And I thought, it's kind of funny, a lot of these people, like, I understand she's just like a kid or whatever, like, so I'm not criticizing her, but it's funny that this movement as a whole, like, they don't give a shit about, like, meat. They don't give a shit about animals that are as smart as, like, our dogs being relentlessly tortured and having their babies ripped away from them and being pumped full of hormones and chemicals and being literally tortured and then eventually gassed to death or having their throats slit, that's the least of it. Like, I don't actually believe personally that it's wrong to kill animals for food. I do believe it's wrong to torture them to make that food cheaper and more readily available. And I know in myself, like, I've known this for years. I've known it was wrong for years, and I continued to do it. I've recently changed a lot of my diet. I still eat some meat, but not in the way I did before, and certain things I won't support or consume because it's just sick. Especially since getting my dog Luna, I can't look at it in the same way. I would just think, what if this happened to her? Like, if someone did this to her, I would literally kill them. And so I can't, And I know that I've been a hypocrite about this for years. I've known it. Hence why it's important to have some flexibility in your thinking and to be able to say, okay, I don't agree with everything this person says, but, I can accept that they feel that way. I can accept them in my world. I can share the planet with them. We can exist in the same industry. We can have spirited conversations about the things that we think or feel and know that both of us are probably flawed in some ways, and there are other ways in which one or the other of us might be superior to the other morally or whatever that means, or might have a right to feel offended by something else that the other person says or to think it's wrong. Fine. But we should go into things with an understanding that, like, none of us are perfect, and it's not very constructive to just kind of, and I was watching and I was thinking, and she just mindlessly eating this ham, not thinking about it, and yet there's this vibe to a lot of this music of, like, this is kind of like moral, this is women's time, and this is time for representation, and this is, there's something inherently moralistic just in the music, even when the lyrics don't reference it. The mere fact of its existence, generally speaking, not with every individual artist, I understand that, but generally speaking, there is a thing of, like, the fact that this person is successful, it's some kind of moral or ethical statement. It's some kind of political statement almost, or the fact that when you group all of them together, like, again, some people, they're just successful for specific reasons, but there's a kind of feeling behind all of it, right? Like, everyone can see this, I'm sure. And representation, this idea of representation is one of the key drivers of this. And I just thought it was funny, like, they don't care about supporting corporations, huge, powerful corporations that are, like, more powerful than a lot of nations. They don't care about supporting social media platforms that are, like, trying to take over just destroy our right to free speech and our privacy. They don't care about supporting the meat trade, and Morrissey, on the other hand, has, for all of these things, he's put his money where his mouth is from day one. They have an album, The Smiths, called Meat is Murder, and I don't agree with that statement, but I really fucking rate his integrity for having, when nobody really cared about that then, for putting all this stuff out there for so long. And in, like, every interview with him, he talks about it. He talks about how disgusting it is and how wrong it is. And I'd always look at people like him and think, like, man, he's so much, like, in that regard, so much better than me, because I knew for years that the way I was eating was just unjustifiable. And I'm sure there are probably some people watching this who know that there are things that they eat that it's wrong and they shouldn't eat them. And like, you just keep doing it because it is really easy to do. I'd like to say it's hard not to. It's not that hard to change. It's just easy to continue, basically. And most people just end up doing so for most of their life. And obviously now he has been basically blacklisted from everything and shunned from everything. I understand he might be a difficult character in some ways, and I don't agree with all the things that he says. And sometimes I think he doesn't necessarily help himself in terms of being liked by people with like the way that he says things. And the fact that sometimes you don't hear that much from him, and then when you do, he says something that could very easily be taken very badly. I don't think that's always very wise, but that's up to him. But the fact is, it's like, he's a pariah, he's a demon, he's a monster, get him away. You know, if you listen to like JPEG Mafia, for example, he's one of the funniest examples of all this stuff. And again, I mean, he's a perfect example, actually. I fucking love it. Well, I wouldn't say I love all his music. Some of it is amazing. The beats and stuff are amazing. The words can be a bit unbearable. And some of it I find is just like a collage of like cool sounds, and it's not really like some of it, especially his last album, I thought was like, I'm just listening to a bunch of like cool internet sounds that's sort of just like, whoa, but it's not really like got that much, it's not many songs. But that said, some of it is incredible, and he is incredible as a guy, and it's just such an inspiration. I think to any independent artist in rap in particular, you couldn't ask for a better like role model and inspiration. And I'm not saying that to be, you know, to counteract what the other things I'm saying about him, but it's just true. Like, I really actually look up to him. And yet the things he says, his political beliefs, they are like ridiculous and sometimes horrible. I mean, sometimes like really horrible. He has one about like, he has songs about like killing cops and stuff, and he has an audio of a real cop being murdered, and he's saying how it's like funny. And he says like, he didn't say like, oh, it's contextual and it's just art, and like, he was actually justifying this on a moral level. So he wasn't saying, I don't need to justify it on a moral level because it's just a piece of art and you're supposed to make your own mind up about it. He was saying, no, this is right for me to put this in there, and the reason, the moral basis for this is X, Y, and Z. You know, police brutality, this, that, and the other. Which is, I mean, you know, if you take that at face value, which I don't really, but if you do, it's monstrous. Like, that is just, you know, that is evil. That man had a family. That's evil. To justify that in any way other than just saying, look, I've just put it there because it's art and it's open to interpretation, and I don't really wish death upon the man, or upon, you know, he's already dead, but whatever. Anyway, he's always going on about Morrissey's racism, and Morrissey's, you know, this and that, and Morrissey is always a target for this stuff. And I think, okay, what about all this good stuff he did and does and says that no one else bothers to say? Because most of us are too fucking lazy and greedy, and we want to eat hamburgers and fucking prosciutto ham if it's Biba Booby or whoever. And like, he's now just like, he's become the Voldemort of Reddit. Like, you're not allowed to say his name on most of the music subreddits. You get banned. People were banned. I mean, everyone knows Reddit is just... Watch Moon's video about the dark tale of Reddit, or whatever it's called, or the tragic tale of Reddit. It's a brutal watch. There's a channel called Moon. Highly recommend his videos. They're amazing. Watch his video on Reddit. But anyway, you can't even say Morrissey's name on these. I remember when they announced on Indie Heads on Reddit that they were going to ban any mention of Morrissey, and you got banned if you said, like I said, like, this is crazy, you can't ban people, you know, it's ridiculous, like, you can't ban mention of him, just like let people make their own mind up. That's what the upvote downvote system is for, isn't it? Democracy, free speech, you know. If you're unhappy to see Morrissey, you downvote it, and then if all of your users collectively decide they don't like Morrissey's gone. But let people think for themselves. No. Banned for saying that. Banned for even suggesting that this policy might be banned. Permanently banned. You know, like, it doesn't matter what you've contributed to our community. It doesn't matter. No, this guy Morrissey is so bad. He's so evil. The mere mention of his name is banned, and if you challenge that, you're gone forever. You can never rejoin our community. What do you know, and this is in the face of, there are artists who talk about murdering people, destroying their communities. There are artists who, again, mindlessly support all these like corporations who will do anything for money. Basically, they don't care if it's harmful to people. They don't care if it's like destroying the minds of young people. They will eat whatever the hell they want. They don't care where it comes from. They will. They will. A lot of these people. So much of the music is like looking down on poor people and insulting people for being poor, and it's all. And like, I don't really want us to have to collectively make moral judgments on these things. But if people are going to, then surely there's a lot more to look at than just Morrissey. And if you're going to look at Morrissey, there's going to be some stuff in both columns, surely. So yeah, it's become totally oppressive. There's a million other things I could get into, and I think this video will have to be in parts. It's too much to get into in one video, and also I'm so fucking hot here with this fan off. I need to put it on again for a minute. You can't see it. I keep looking on the camera. You can't see it. I'm pouring sweat right now. It's because it's such a shit quality camera and the lighting's not good. I'm pouring sweat. My back is fucking soaked. Yeah. So I'll do multiple videos on all of this because it's it's hard to cover. Part of me has avoided it because you can be made to suffer the consequences of talking about things like this in endlessly surprising and horrible ways, and I have been over the years. And part of me, I didn't want to put it on this channel because I just love doing this channel, and it's been kind of separate from all these things. But man, yeah, it's hard to ignore sometimes. Yeah, cool. Alright, well, nice. I hope you guys are doing well anyway. Let me know your thoughts and feelings in the comments. I understand I might not have explained everything perfectly in this video. Take it with a pinch of salt, you know, like I'm sort of just speaking off the top of my head. But yeah, cool. Alright, nice one. Catch you later, guys.